Hello, this is Ed Smith with Universal Digest, and I'm here today with Wendy Ruby, and she is uh, replete with this huge number of experiences. But on top of that, I want to say that it's been a joy just to getting to know her this morning, and the fact that she's very adept. She's an international traveler and a business person in a number of areas that I find unique and very exciting to even listen to. And so she's had a very good and very important professional life. More than that, she's also had a lot of experiences of which her entire family has experienced. And she wanted, originally, she contacted me, excuse me, from New Zealand because she knew her sister or knows her sister and said she'd love to give some input on some of the family experiences, her own experiences, as well as what she's seen in life. And in some ways, I would say that she has a kind of precognitive ability in a number of areas. Many people are empathic or precognitive or uh, have more of a sixth sense, and we don't even pay attention to it half the time. Wendy Ruby has paid attention to it, and her experiences here, I'd like for her to please share. And Wendy, it's great meeting you today. Thanks for taking the time. We got through all the roughage of getting Skype up and running, and so please go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Ed. You're awesome, by the way. It was so
Oh,
much fun meeting you and everything and talking. And I was a bit hesitant when I did contact you after listening to my sister, Cindy Robinson, on the interview that you had with her. And I was a bit hesitant, but at the same time, I was like excited. I get excited in my voice right now because I was
yes.
like, this man knows his stuff, and I have a lot of questions at the same time. And some of the things that I discussed with my sister in the past, she has always said they were UFO experiences. I never, like I mentioned before, I never really called them that. I didn't even have words to put in to. I just know that these things happen to me,
Mhm.
and I cannot deny them. And, if someone listened to me, they'd think I was crazy some days. So I just thought I'm not going to share all the time with every person I know. But at the same time, I figured, this is one time that I think I need to share, um,
I'm
and
very
to explain that these things did happen to me also. And
eh,
but they were maybe in a different way than my sisters. And I really look up to my sister. I love her to death. She's amazing, very, very knowledgeable person. Um, she got all the smarts. Her and
well.
my
I'm
brother.
not so sure about that, Wendy. In our
Her and my
discussions,
brother, I'm telling you, they both did, and I'm the middle kid. But anyway, the one thing that I did have going for me since I was a kid, and again did not know what to do with the information, is that I kept having feelings about something that could possibly happen in the future. And I mentioned the one incident, the very first incident that happened to me was when I was ready to go on this long trip with my family members, my aunt and uncle. They were going from Chicago all the way to Arizona and then back again. And the entire time I was going, they had 5 small children, and I was the babysitter. So I was about 15 to 16, like I mentioned. But from the time that I was leaving, something inside of me kept saying, we're going to get in this car accident. And you need to it was almost like they were trying to help us, because they were trying to say, you need to put your seatbelts on. This is going to happen. It's inevitable. And I'm preparing you ahead of time to be prepared and to just put the seatbelts on. Why that happened, I'll never know. But as I said to them constantly, they wouldn't put the seatbelts on, because back in the day, like I mentioned, I'm 68. I'll have to say my age because I
well,
can't remember what age was this. I mean, it was 15 or 16, so I'm trying to remember the year. But by the way, that year, station wagons were really, we called them hoopty cars. And station wagons were the big deal back then, especially if you had a big family.
Yep,
So all the kids would just be thrown in the back with all the seats down, and you would just go on your merry way, and that was the way life was back then.
I remember the Chevrolet station wagons where there's so much.
It was a Chevy, by the way.
Oh, well, and I remember those dates too in the 1960s when you were in like a 59 Chevrolet station wagon like my dad had, and there were no seat belts to be found. And even some of them began supplying them like in 1968 when they started having like signal lights on the sides of cars that they didn't used to have. But yeah, you're pretty much rolling around these huge bench seats that people don't know anymore. So I can relate to that.
Yeah, and by the way, now that as you were talking, I had to hurry up and figure it out on my fingers. It was 1968. Yeah.
There you are.
So, but anyway, as we went, I basically ruined their entire vacation because by the time we got to Arizona, they
saved their lives instead of ruining their vacation.
Well, we didn't have an accident all the way to Arizona, and they took me into a room and they said I was in tears because they told me I ruined their vacation. I need to shut up. I need to stop talking about these terrible things. And I said, but we're still going to get in the accident on the way home. And they didn't want to hear it. So I, at that point, was told, do not talk about these things. So as a kid, I just thought, you don't talk about this. If you get these feelings, don't talk about it. So on the way back from Arizona, we got to Texas, and that's where we flipped over 5 times and there was nothing left to the vehicle, and all the kids rolled out all over the streets, and my aunt's ear was cut off and different things happened. We all had all these different injuries, and at the same time, we were glad to be alive.
So everybody survived.
Yeah, at that point, what was that?
So everyone survived. And if I may ask this question too, Wendy, what was a period of time that you mentioned this precognitive event of having an accident to the time that it really did happen?
So if I can remember right, it was about, it was a few days before we were leaving, and we were out there for approximately 2 weeks.
Okay.
But it was almost like something was trying, the way that I look at it now in my brain, and then I'm an adult, I now think that it was something on the other end, wherever, trying to help us, trying to give us a warning, trying to prepare us, you know? And the only thing that the police and the fire department had to pry me out, they said that the only thing that really saved our life was the fact that in the end, as we were leaving, one of the relatives said, why don't you put this big mattress in the back of the vehicle? And because of that, they said it was, you know, it helped it to bounce as it was flipping, you know. So, but that was the one, that was one of them. But at that point, my mom bought me a Ouija board.
Oh dear. Well, that's okay.
She said, you're either gonna be a witch, or maybe you're supposed to be a nun. I'm not really sure, because she was a good Catholic, you know.
Wow, what a fan.
And so, yeah, exactly. And as a kid, I'm just like, I don't know. But my brother, I scared the daylights out of him with the Ouija board.
I bet.
And things that I could do with that Ouija board was pretty awesome, you know. So.
The fact you mentioned that, my friends and I experimented with a Ouija board, and we had enough wherewithal that it worked. And so you remember, there are all sorts of forces out there, and some may not be as good as others.
Yeah, well, when you're 16 years old and you have a Ouija board and you don't know what it's doing and it's brand new, that's a brand new thing on that they were advertising on TV to get, you know. So
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that and the chemistry set that blows you up, remember?
I had my chemistry set, believe me, and I had all phenolphthalein. I remember some of the chemicals, and
Oh,
I,
yeah, I know. They would never give us those chemicals nowadays, you know.
oh, forget it.
We could make bombs, you know.
There's no way. Yes, back then we could, and actually, I made black powder bombs that we could go from incendiary to powerful. And back then, you could go to your local pharmacy and drugstore and buy the parts you needed.
Oh my gosh. Ed, I can say one thing. It's a good thing we weren't in the same neighborhood, okay?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
We could have got in some trouble. So,
And that's what's so hard on children today. The things that we experienced, they try it now. It's like,
oh, there's no way.
no way that you can do this. So, gosh.
Exactly.
Well,
So anyway, I had a lot of experience with the Ouija board. I'm not going to go through all those experiences with friends, this and that. And then now I'm just going to jump up ahead because I had 6 children, and
wow.
And during that time, for whatever reason, when I got to, I had 3 children, and then I all of a sudden stopped producing children. Like they were coming out almost on time, like every 2 years, right?
Wow.
And
Wow.
then I did not have a very good menstrual period at that time, so I never knew when I was getting pregnant. But all of a sudden, in 1978, and I wrote it down. I actually don't have the journal here with me, but I wrote it down. And while I was sleeping, I went out of my body. I went through the wall. That's the only thing I could say is I actually went through a wall, and it was almost like it was the only thing I could explain was like it was another dimension. And as I put my hand through the wall, it was almost like there's something going on the other side, and it's almost like a big party. And there's all these beings and all this stuff happening on the other side. And while I was on that other side, I was told that I would have a baby the following year, because this was 1978. I would have a baby on Tuesday, November 13th, 1979.
Wow.
And what was really strange was I came back into the wall. I actually was then awake, and I stared at the wall and I went, wow, something's going on in that wall. And I woke my husband up at the time, and I woke him up and I said, babes, you can't believe this. I just went through the wall. And he says, yeah, go back to sleep. And I'm like, no, seriously. And back in the day, for the listeners, let me kind of put you up to date here. We didn't have cell phones where you could just look at a calendar and go, what day is Tuesday, November 13th? Is that in 1979? You can just look on your phone right now. But back in the day, you actually had to find a great big wall calendar or a desk calendar, and you would hope that it had the next year's dates on it. Okay? And you and I are around the same age, so that's the reason why you can sit there and go, yeah, right.
Oh, I relate to all of this. And
exactly. And so
even out body experiences. So
yeah, and so my husband, I'm just like, come on, this is amazing. We're gonna have a baby next year, and we need to look if November 13th is on a Tuesday. So he rubs his eyes, gets out of bed, stumbles down the flight of stairs to get to his office, and he finds a calendar, and he brings it up with a pen, and he circles Tuesday, November 13th, 1979 was on a Tuesday, right? And he circles it and he puts number 4. And he goes, wow, so what happened? And then I had to explain to him what happened. And he goes, wow, that's weird. He goes, why would that happen? And I go, I don't know why. I go, but I'm gonna believe that we're gonna have a baby on November 13th, Tuesday, November 13th, 1979, okay? Okay, so then let's bet. So then all these incidents happen. Now I'm going to go to my doctor.
Mhm.
I still even remember his name, but I won't mention it.
That's fine.
In Chicago, and we were on Chicago time.
Right.
Back in the day, they had just started. Basically, an ultrasound was like a new thing. They didn't have the technology they have today, obviously.
Right.
But he told me, I didn't tell him about that dream, but I said, when do you think I'm going to have this baby? Because he couldn't go against my last menstrual period because I didn't have one. And my menstrual periods were all screwed up from that accident. So half the time I never had one. And so now he's looking at it and he says, why don't you go for this test? They're pretty accurate. And I said, okay. So he gets it back and he says, you're going to have this baby in October. And I said, oh, really? And I said, can that test be wrong? And he goes, they're really accurate. And I said, do you mind if I tell you a story of what happened to me? And I told the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, wow. And he actually gave all the glory to God, because he said, that's a God thing that you went through that wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, wow, well, whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, maybe I should just, maybe you should find a bed for me to have a baby on Tuesday, November 13th. And so he did. He put it in the charts.
That's amazing.
At the hospital, they were all waiting for me. And I went into labor on Tuesday, November 13th. But here's the weird thing I have to say, and I do not understand, because sometimes when we have things happen to us,
Mm-hmm.
we don't always have all the answers. There's little bits and pieces that are missing, or things are happening, or whatever. I don't understand all of it.
Correct.
And to tell you the truth, until I went to New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
this will show you that I didn't listen too well in school, because even though that's the southern hemisphere, I didn't realize that all the stars are different and that everything's opposite, and that they're in winter when we're in summer,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're almost a day ahead of us, and the time zone is completely weirded out. So the entire time I was stuck in with the COVID thing happening for the last 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
in New Zealand, it was, I realized then what was happening as we're going around the sun, and how it's all working with all the time and everything. And that's why, and I'm mentioning that because with my experience, I started in labor, I was in labor, but I ended up having my daughter basically in American, in Chicago. It was basically the 14th. So every year it's her birthday. I think it's the 13th. But if I would have been in New Zealand, I would have had her. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
It's because of how the Earth is going around the sun.
Actually, Australia and New Zealand are around, I think, uh, it, I have friends in Thailand and Australia. They are in the next day, the 14th, and it's like about anywhere from 12 to 16 hours ahead of us the next day. So when I talk to one of my friends, say in Thailand, they're on the next day. So we have to counter that so that we can have a classic discussion without confusion. And it took a while for me to learn how those time zones work, like you're saying. But
Oh,
you're
they can
exactly
mess
right.
you up.
Yeah, if you'd have been in New Zealand, it would have been the 14th. So that is an amazing precognitive situation.
Right, or it would have been, if I was in Hawaii, she would have been born on the 13th. Or if I was in the Cook Islands, she would have been born on the 13th.
Right.
And I went to the Cook Islands, by the way, and I realized that that's how the Earth works. So it was interesting that I would go through that wall, get that information,
Mm-hmm.
and that I would actually go into labor on Tuesday, November 13th. But according to her birth certificate, it'll show the 14th. So that was interesting in itself. But it just shows me the timelines that go on in these different dimensions, and how they're helping us,
Well,
and how they
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that like the doctor said, it was, giving glory to God, but at the same time, we do have guardian angels, and I've already had way too many experiences just to try to disclaim such an event because they happen numerous times. And you've been protected. You protected through listening those children that were in the car at the time, whether it was a mattress or whatever. No one got killed with a vehicle with no seatbelts flipping 5 times, and you were within a 2-week precognitive period. Then, like with your daughter, that was what, 9, 10 months, or 12 months, to the next year. But you knew exactly what was going to happen. So yes,
Right.
I personal opinion, you were touched by a guardian angel, definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I have a lot of experiences, but I'm not going to mention them all. And I only have one. So I'm going to tell you one more that goes with this
Okay.
type of experience. But then, and then I'm going to change over to what's happened personally with the paranormal thing. So
Okay.
the last thing that happened was my mother and father, and my sister's mother and father, we all have the same mother and father. They died in 2008. And they died within a couple months from each other.
Oh, wow.
But what happened was when my father died, I started praying and asking God to please don't take my mom. She was my best friend,
Wow.
I believe that she could actually rise up the way that Jesus rose up all these, different
Wow,
people.
that's
And
amazing.
I truly believed she could rise up if she really, if that was meant to be, and if she was meant to do that. But anyway, long story short, I had gotten on the phone. I was living in Utah at the time. She was in Michigan. I talked to her on the phone, and she's like, "Wow, I'm feeling terrific. I'm amazed. I'm feeling so good." And I thought, "Wow, my prayers are answered." And she was fighting cancer. And anyway, I got off the phone. I put the phone down. I walked into my bedroom, and I banged into this being. I could not see the being. It was huge. It was almost, I was thinking to myself, the being must have had to like bend down in order to be in that room, because he was so big and muscular is all I could say. But I could only feel his presence,
Hmm.
but I could not see him. And the being said to me, "Wendy, that's the last time you will talk to your mom,
Wow.
and her hour is up, and I need to take her." And
Wow.
so whatever that being was, I don't know. It was a spiritual being of some kind.
Mhm.
And I started crying, and I went and told my husband, and I said, "Wow, that's the last time I'm going to talk to my mom." And he actually said in a very loving, there was just so much love emulating from him,
Mhm.
but the love was just undescribable. And yet he said, "Do not call her back. And you need to stop praying for her." And I followed those directions.
Wow.
And I went into the tub, and I had a skylight, and I went into I always do detox tubs. And I went into this detox tub, looked up into the skylight, and saw the stars in Utah. And I just started saying, "Okay, I will accept it." I went to bed, and a couple hours later, I get a phone call to get on the next air flight, that my mom had gone into a coma. And by the time that my sister and I and my brother were all there, my mother passed away, and I never got to talk to her again, like the being said. Other than, yeah, I was there, she was in a coma, but I never had her voice with me. And so those incidents in my life were very significant. You know,
Thank you
and
so
then
much
of
for
course
sharing.
my sister would want me to tell you about the time that the police came and got me when I was younger, but I'm not even going to mention that one.
No, that's fine.
She
Both
thinks I was
those
abducted at that point, so I do not
probably.
know. But anyway,
Both
we're
you and
gonna
Cindy are awesome.
we're gonna flip over to
Okay. Oh, goodness.
is it okay to flip over one more then, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is your floor, my friend.
Okay.
This is
Thanks,
great.
Ed.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
So now we're gonna flip over to my life that's been within the last 4 years. And I was married to a new man. We were married almost, gosh, I think it was almost 16 years. And I did get a divorce from him last year, but I was truly in love with this man, and he was amazing. Our entire family loved this guy. They really did. My grandchildren, everyone looked up to him. And he was amazing. We never fought. Like, it was an amazing relationship.
Right. That's great.
And I thought he was, like my true soulmate, as they say. And
Well,
anyway, we were watching grandchildren in Idaho, and my daughter and her husband were in another country as we were watching these kids. And they kept calling me because they were getting the same sort of feelings like I got when I was 15 and 16 years old.
oh,
They thought, I wonder if she's gonna. They kept feeling that my granddaughter, one of them, they have 4 children. One of them specifically was going to get in a car accident or something was happening to her, and they just couldn't put something to it. And I was getting worried about it because I'm like, I'm so intuitive and I don't feel like anything's happening to my granddaughter. And yet at the same time, I said, you're worrying me that you guys are calling me. I said, stop worrying about the kids. They're all going to be okay.
wow.
And this is where I wish I would have listened a little bit more, because I think that all of us have that gift that we can listen. If we want to listen, we will. It will be there for us. But for some strange reason, because I was so involved in the kids have to go here, go there, do the schools, this and that, I had so many schedules going on, and I was juggling everything while I was the babysitter and while my husband was the babysitter. And while their parents are out of town, I didn't want anything to happen to them. And so I wasn't listening at that time. I wasn't paying attention.
That
But
happens to all of us.
yeah, but it was a good thing my daughter and her husband were paying attention, because they specifically knew something is going wrong and it's not good. And so they came home and they got my granddaughter up while we were asleep, and they started talking to her, and she was only 7 years old.
Oh my gosh.
But as they were talking to her, she started crying, and she says, but mommy, I can't tell you what happened because I promised Grandpa I wouldn't say anything. And her mommy said, it's okay to tell me and your daddy. And she did. And she gave 9 counts of sexual pedophilia that my husband did to her. While I was in the house, I didn't even notice it. I didn't pay attention. It made me sickened that I had that gift and that I wasn't paying attention.
Well, but
And
don't blame yourself, because that is more prevalent in our society than people think.
well, and it's something that you would rather just throw under the rug and wish it didn't happen, but
Well,
it did. And
Wendy, sorry to interrupt you, but in our generation and in our time, it was a taboo that was not let out to the public.
exactly.
By the 1980s, things were changing, but before that, even like alternative lifestyles were absolutely taboo, all the way up through really the 1970s until things started changing.
Yeah.
So
And
don't.
so, and the reason why I'm saying this is mainly, I'm not going to give all accounts of it, but I have to give somewhat for the listener to understand that the police were called in, the detectives were called in. He did not deny it, and he went. They put him in. I watched him just go to the police car. I do get choked up.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's a hard one, really. But
it,
seriously, I'll just keep talking and then I can get it out of me.
well, sure, but we can move on from that because that is
It's okay.
it's a form of precognition that you, in total innocence, avoided because you were so busy. It wasn't that you weren't really trying to listen. It's you
No.
were embroiled in the day-to-day life, and things were happening around you of which you had no idea. And this does happen more than people think.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, the last thing I would ever want is my grandchildren to be harmed. And those were not his blood related grandchildren.
right,
He
what
was, he
that
was, they were not his blood related grandchildren. So, anyway, so long story short, he did go to prison. He's been there for almost 4 years. It'll
wow.
be 4 years in February. It was February 2018. And he did admit to 9 counts of pedophilia.
Well,
Uh, he didn't. He didn't admit to the others that had happened to the other grandchildren. So anyway, the reason I'm mentioning that is because at the time we had our restaurant in Iowa
hmm?
and in Kansas. We had 2 locations with the Amish. It was very, very successful.
If I may
Um,
stop you right there for a second, please. Just so the viewers are really understanding, this is all tied together. And Wendy is also writing her own book and memoirs, of which here at Universal Digest, it'll be all open for her to view, see, and to incorporate into what she is doing, because she told me that these events all have meaning and they need to get out so people get to hear it and understand it. And I really appreciate your candidness, your honesty, your transparency. And I just want the readers to understand that we can have all of these experiences, whether they're paranormal, UAP, UFO related, or anything such as that, but they're tied in many different ways. And that's what you were saying to me, Wendy, that you wanted to get out. So please continue. I really applaud you on your honesty.
yeah, and thanks, Ed, for explaining that because it does all tie in, I promise you.
Oh,
And
I do.
and this is the last of the stories actually, but the of my incidents. But what and why I'm mentioning that is because our restaurant was so popular. Something happened from the time that my husband was put in prison, um, and then for almost, I believe it was like 8 months, he kept saying he was innocent and lied. And in the end, he finally admitted. But during the lying 8 months, something was released, and I don't exactly understand what or how it all works. But during that time, we had people from the paranormal teams that actually wanted to come over and
Mhm.
spend the night for 24 hours because they were getting calls from customers and other people saying that there was paranormal activity going on at our restaurant. I'm not going to name it or anything, but basically they just wanted to come over and do all these. I don't know what they do when they do it, but they had a publication that they actually wanted to put in there
Mhm.
the activity that was going on in that place. But we had so many different things happening, and some of it was, if you want to say ghosts, they would open closed doors, this and that. That wasn't so bad. But what
Oh,
started
freak me
going
out.
wrong, I was getting used to them actually.
Oh my gosh, that freaked me out.
It was freaking me out because you have to let me kind of put you in the picture, the
Sure.
listener, and you, Ed. The the place was 10,000 square feet filled with greenhouses and different buildings. And it was on about an acre surrounded by a few other acres. And it was a really awesome location where people loved to come because the Amish would grow our food, like I mentioned. They would grow it in the greenhouses. We would make whatever food there was. We would make it from scratch. And we would try not to put any preservatives in it. And then we would just be open until we would put the close sign. When the door closed, that means we're out of food. And we would have no parking. People would just come in from everywhere. And so they were just all talking like, what's going on? What's going on? No one knew about my husband yet. They didn't know about what happened.
Right.
We just opened up that business for the season, and we had some other people that were going to purchase it, and they did not want the paranormal team over because they were going to purchase it, and they were like, we don't want, you know, all this activity. They did realize that there was something going on in the place. But we just didn't talk about it a whole lot. And so upstairs was my room, and that was our house. We had an upstairs, and downstairs was the business. So in the evening upstairs, I'm all alone. And all of a sudden I'd hear all this crash, bang, stuff happening. And I don't even know how to have a gun or point a gun or do anything with a gun. But I would open up the door and I'd yell down there, try coming up here, I got a gun. And I'd slam the door again and lock it. Because I was like, something's going on and I don't know, but it's those spooks again, you know?
Did you ever see any of the apparitions themselves?
Well, yeah, I'll get to that. I'll give you a couple more incidents. There were tons and tons of incidents, but I'm only giving you a few.
Wow.
So now I wake up in the morning and of course there's a huge mess downstairs, and the Amish made all their own honey. And there were jars just everywhere, this and that. Things crashed over. I'm like, was there an earthquake or was there something going on in the Midwest? I don't know. This was in Iowa, you know.
Well, they could be tornadoes.
But anyway, I told my daughter, and she'd come over and witness it, and I'd take pictures, and she says, Mom, she's going to let my one grandson, who's almost 15 years old, he's going to come stay with me. She was getting worried because she says, this is not good. This stuff is happening. And I go, yeah, but I said, I'm not going to worry. They're not harming me, you know, but I said, but at the same time, they're being annoying, and I don't know where are they even coming from, you know? And so now what happens is my grandson comes. And let me just back up the story a minute. At this point, now the media gets a hold of the story somehow, some way. They make it the top 20 stories in Iowa. They make it breaking news. They put it all over the, you know, you can look it up. If you look up the name of our restaurant, you can look it up. It's on, it's all in the newspaper and everything. You can find some of the articles.
What was the name of it? I'll write it down.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted that on yours.
Sure, no, I'll look it up.
It's called The Ladybug in Clear Lake, Iowa.
Oh, the Ladybug. That's
and if you ever heard of Clear Lake, Iowa, that's where Buddy Holly and Richie Valens and the whole bit, they had their last gig there, and they ended up with a plane crash right there.
Right. And
yeah.
Can I back up something else with that too? Did this paranormal group ever spend the 24 hours there, and what did they find if they did?
Okay, they seriously wanted so badly to be there. They did come for lunch, but because the people that were on a contract to buy it, I was training them, and they hadn't signed off yet 100%. They did not want the paranormal team coming over at all and spending the night there. I'm telling you, I would have had them there if it was up to me.
Sure.
Because I was like, something's going on,
Well, I'm getting these images of Ghostbusters in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone ever like, I haven't even told my whole family these stories because they wouldn't even know, I don't even know if they'd believe me or not. Who knows?
May I ask you this? You mentioned this earlier. Do you still have some pictorial evidence or video evidence of what happened there at the restaurant?
Well, I had something on a phone that I no longer have, so I didn't keep some of that. Um, I don't know. I don't have any of the only other evidence I have, I'll tell you in just a few minutes because it's my grandchildren that witnessed.
Okay, sure, sure.
Yeah, so basically what had happened at that point is that my daughter was getting worried. She lived down the block from me. She had my 15-year-old grandson come over. I think he was 14 or 15 at the time. And now I'm stressed out, and the doctor had given me some medication that I take late at night to go to sleep so that I could sleep because of all the media action, and people were going crazy at our place. They don't know the whole story, and so they attack,
Of course, yes.
And so
Right,
my grandson, all I remember was an image, him waking me up in the middle of the night, and he had a golf club with him like this. And I remember him, he's like, Grandma, get up, get up. Those things are all downstairs in the ladybug. They're all over the place.
Oh my.
They're making racket. Do you hear them? And I go, yeah. I said, just call 911. That's what I told him.
How do they react to it?
and he was so scared that the next morning, he never did call 911, but the next morning he said, I am never, ever going in the ladybug again.
Oh,
and
wow.
he refused to ever, he was working there. He quit his job. He would not work there anymore. He was scared. It scared him. And then the only other thing that happened, well, there were several others, but let me just tell you this. So one morning I had to wake up early because we made all fresh breads. Mm-hmm. And I was the only one in the whole place. And there were very, the doors were very heavy duty doors, they're commercial doors with the exit sign at the top. And nothing was opened, okay? And so I woke up super early in the morning. It's like 5:30 a.m. And as I walked past this area where there were displays, something whistled at me. And now I'm not a good whistler, but it went, wait, how do you whistle? Like that.
A cat call, they call it, I think.
I don't even know how to whistle, but it was, there you go, exactly like that. You're a good whistler. I freaked out because I knew, first of all, I thought it was maybe a guy was in there, right?
Right.
I went and got a broom. And I went back where the display was, and I'm like, and I'm looking behind, and I'm like, where did this come from? Or did someone play a joke on me? Like your mind begins to go, where is this coming from? Did someone set up a little sensor where when you go past it, it goes and it whistles, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, but I looked and I searched everything, couldn't find a darn thing. And then I'm like, wow, now I know those things are real. I mean, they're freaking real. That one really did put a little scare in me. The hairs in my back went up, and I was like, come on.
Sure. Did any ever take form, any type of conclusive form?
Yeah, okay, now I'm going to tell you that one. So there again, there's lots of them, but we're only going to give you a few today.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you one more that my grandchildren witnessed with me, and then I'm going to tell you what I did afterwards.
Okay.
So my grandchildren are all different ages because I have 20 of them and one great grandchild. They're all different ages. Okay.
Wow, what a family.
So the ones that showed up that night, because they all were like, we want to see the ghosts. Grandma, we're going to stay overnight with you, you know?
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, don't antagonize them, please, you know?
Yeah, really.
So anyway, the ones that showed up were from another state, and they were, I'm guessing on their ages right now. One of them was like 17, the other one was like 15 or 16. The other one was like 13, another 14, and a little one that was like 6. So they all wanted to come in, do this grandma thing. We're going to have popcorn. We're going to have fun.
Oh my
I let
goodness.
them go throughout the whole restaurant. They can drink it and eat as much as they want, you know. They love it.
Oh, I bet.
But as
Did
soon
they?
as we opened up the door,
Mhm.
that big commercial door that I opened it up. You have to tug it open. They went in before me, and as soon as we went in, there was this huge, like it was almost a suction. It was almost like there was a vacuum, and it was like, like, and then we all witnessed it from the place where that one whistled. It came flying out of that room and went across the bar.
Well,
There was we have like we have craft beers, and we had all kinds of stuff
right.
there, okay? And we had displays all over. And so this being, whatever it was short, but it was super fast. It was just like whoosh. And we all saw it, and then it disappeared. And we
What
all heard
description?
it. We all heard it. We
What was the
all
sound?
saw it.
What was the sound making? It was making.
It was like a whooshing sound. It's hard to describe. It was like a vacuum whooshing, like, and it went fast. It was super fast. It was like man, the fastest thing I ever saw. Like, and it was dark. It was a dark, shadowy,
Okay, but it's
and it was short.
humanoid,
It was
humanoid,
short.
humanoid type of shadow.
Um, yeah, I would say it more looked like a, you know, if I was going to mention something, it would look like a dark shadow ET.
Okay.
You know how ET was short, and if I can remember him when I was
Oh,
young,
you mean from the movie
the
E.T.?
movie ET, you know
Okay,
how
got it.
he was just like he's just like this, and he was like he waddled around sort of. I don't remember exactly how he looked, but um
He didn't
all,
say Elliot, did he?
no. So the thing was is
Sorry.
that it all it was a dark shadow,
Mhm.
and it was short, and it was fast, and it ran like it looked like it was short, but it could have actually been taller because it went behind the bar. But yet you could see it across the bar, and it was going past all of my displays, like it was running through them.
Wow.
It was freaky. And every single one of those grandkids saw it, and a couple of them started crying. They got scared. And then we called their parents over. And we go, guys, something's going on. We can't be staying here. And then my daughter's like, Mom, you can't be staying here. I go, I am not going to let these things rule my life. So I said, but probably the kids should not stay here, you know, because
Right.
it's not a good experience for them. I
Mhm.
don't know if they're trying to help us or if they're not trying to help us, but whatever they're doing, they're here. And
But
so
all
I
the
ended up, this is the last of my story then. I ended up calling my friends from Utah, and they knew they're very, very knowledgeable, like Cindy. But
Mhm.
I remember them telling me when I was telling them this story once before that they knew someone that could basically get rid of these entities. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of them. Because at this point, the people that were going to purchase our place no longer wanted to purchase it. They gave it back to me. I basically had 8 sales on it. And no one wanted it. And at the last sale, they finally decided they're going to push the whole thing down. And there is a video, you can watch it online. I'll try to find some of this stuff for you, but anyway, it's online and you can watch the video taking the whole place down. And people texting me and saying, where did all those entities go, that were in there?
You didn't have a house
Where
anymore.
did all the ghosts and the spooks go? My workers were asking, everybody's asking.
How old was this building?
So the building was actually it used to be Kiefer's greenhouse. And I do have a picture of that. It was in one of the first greenhouses in Iowa. Some of the stones that built the back end area, where the fireplace, that we had like a, I don't know, 12-foot fireplace back there.
Wow.
And,
Nice. Yeah.
and it was built with the grotto rocks. And the rocks, if you look up the grotto, the Catholic Church owns it in Iowa. I don't remember exactly in Iowa where it is, but anyway, it's called the grotto.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to spell that, but anyway, the stones, they had extra stones that came in from there, and there are geologists supposedly that cannot figure out where those stones have come from that were at the grotto. So we had some of those, and they actually cannot figure it out. You'd have to read up on the whole thing. It's pretty amazing.
Well, sure. What I can do is we can put this together for the article as well to give the viewer and then the reader more ideas, especially if you can produce, a couple of photos or anything that you can find. And I will look this up myself because that's very interesting. But again, approximately how many years old was that original greenhouse?
Oh man, and I'm going to be guessing, but
it's okay.
I think that possibly it wasn't really super old, but it was the first greenhouse. So I believe it might have been the 1970s, possibly.
That's really new then. That's
it's not that old.
No, and to have that depth of paranormal activity.
Well, not only that, the people that used to run the business in there gave me all their stories on top of it. But for some reason, I related those things came out. They didn't seem to show up until my husband did what he did, and until the media made a big deal. And then all of a sudden, it was like they were having a joy party. It was strange. That is why I actually contacted you, because I was like, sure. Why would that be? Would that have any relation to that, or is it just a coincidence?
Nothing happens by accident, number one. And I knew that we were talking about this going into a little bit of a Q&A or a happenstance type of situation. It could be very well that the, mental power comes in all degrees of strength. And it might have been because of his mindset, the way he was thinking, could have drawn more of these entities. However, the original owners of the building from the 1970s already had it there. So there's
several generations that came in and gave me stories. There were several owners, and they all gave me different stories, weird stories that would happen to them. One of them almost died there, that fell through the greenhouse, like weird things. And in fact, when that happened, she told me the story. I was like, wow, so exactly where did it happen? And she'd show me. And she goes, yeah, and I haven't seen that friend in probably about 40 or 50 years, okay?
Oh, wow. Well,
but she said, but they were young kids back then. And then all of a sudden, guess what happens? The woman that fell through the greenhouse entered the ladybug at another date. And here again, my intuition told me that's the lady that fell through the greenhouse. So I went to her and I said, excuse me. I go, were you here when you were a kid and you fell through the greenhouse? And she looked at me in shock. And she goes, how would you know that? And I go, I don't know. Someone gave me the story, and here you are. You're the lady that fell through the greenhouse. I
Well,
said your friend has been talking about you. It was crazy.
well, all we can say is it's without the lack of proper terms that I wouldn't know because I'm not a ghost buster or a ghost hunter or anything like that. But it just was a spiritually active place. For some reason, it was a collection point of these entities that were still here on Earth, but in a non-corporeal form.
I just don't know if the cemetery across the street has anything to do with it too. Who knows, you know?
You know, all
Who
things.
knows? I don't know. I don't know anything about paranormal stuff, seriously.
Now that's interesting. You mentioned that across the street is a huge cemetery because that actually gives it a little bit more credibility. You know that these entities were kind of locked here, and hey, let's go over to the greenhouse, and oh, now it's the ladybug. Who knows? But that's for that many people to see, including your grandchildren, children,
Workers,
workers, over
customers,
that many people,
past owners.
and it made that type of news in Clear Lake, Iowa. I'm sure that there's some sort of material I can find about related newscasts about. Oh, one question then, quick. About what year was it that the media decided to make it a circus?
So when they, yeah, because had to almost give away the thing. I owed more money in the end.
I'm sure.
Nobody wanted it after that. But anyway, it was 2018 is
Okay,
when this happened.
2018.
And that's when all the activity was happening in the place. And then I sold it. I believe it finally got a sale in December of 2019.
Okay,
Yeah. But I
so
was going to mention one last thing
sure.
when I did call that, if you want to call him the Ghostbuster,
Yeah, those whoever they were.
whoever he was, but he had told me how to basically get rid of them. And they did open the door and slam the door behind them when I did do exactly what he told me to do. Um, that man actually died right afterwards. I still owe him $100. I feel terrible because I told him I would pay him.
Well, I don't
But
think.
anyway, what happened was that they did close the door, and then my workers said, "Wendy, where do you think they went?" Because they never ever showed up back in that place again. The whole entire time I was there, anything, I never saw them. Nobody saw them. The realtors didn't see them. We don't know where they went, really, but they
Uh,
did go.
well, they went, and that's interesting. At least it helped you affect a sale ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. For hardly
Wow,
anything.
what a story! That yeah, that's I'll look that up and put that in the article. But the importance is you certainly do have just a huge volumes of experiences that are different than your sister Cindy had. But when you both lived apart, then that goes without saying. Did you have then, when you, Cindy, and your brother were together, uh, any of the experiences she mentioned, just without getting into any detail, it's up to you, really. Did you experience them with her as well?
I really haven't. I She would think that I did possibly, but here's the thing, because I was always so busy doing things and
Yes.
not paying attention.
No.
She always says I don't pay attention. You know, I love her. She's always looking out for me.
Well,
But I'm
she's
like, yeah, I will be the first one to admit that I'm not always paying attention. I'm not always looking up in the sky. I'm not always, sometimes I'm meditating and I have my eyes closed,
yeah.
So,
Same time too. You're a consummate business person in a number of areas, so I can relate to that because so am I. And
yeah.
the mind is usually very occupied, and I find it difficult sometimes to face boredom head on. That is non sequitur. It's not going to
It's
happen.
so hard.
Same
Yeah.
for you. Remember, your sister Cindy is a consummate professional and a program writer, things like that. It just, wow, her focus is incredible. So it would stand
Yeah.
to reason why your experiences would be singularly different over time.
Yeah, they are different. And that's why she might have called them paranormal. And like, again, I guess learning from you is that there's so many different names that you can name them, you know?
Yes, there are, and
And I don't know enough of, I don't know enough. I don't have the knowledge or enough research that I've done to understand them. But forward on, I am going to listen up more on some of your stuff you have going on here
oh
and
well,
read your book when it's out.
well, thank you so much. It's definitely a labor of love, that's for sure. And is there anything else you'd like to add to this before we close this session?
No, I don't think, I think, like I said, I don't want to, I think I pointed out the ones that I felt would be appropriate
Okay.
for this interview. And I thank you for it, really,
Well,
truly.
it's my honor, and I'm humbled. And it was a great interview. It is. You covered an awful lot of information in a short time over many years, and both positive and some very negative, which that's sad, but many people experience these things. It's more on the many side, in my humble opinion, than on the few side. Um, but I really appreciate, again, your being so honest and candid. Your It shows in who you are, and I am honored again to just be a part of it and to listen to what you've had to say, knowing full well that as this comes out, a lot of people are going to benefit over time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ed.
Well, it's my pleasure, and Wendy, is what we set up talking that the viewers didn't see was about another 45 minutes of preparatory where I got to learn more about you as well, you about me, and that foundation cannot be taken away. So, whatever help you need in the future as you get along in your book, feel free to contact me. You know
Yeah,
how to
for
do it
sure.
in this wacky world in which we live right now, and it seems to be getting wackier by the day. But we rest assured that good things are coming.
Yeah, if anything, I do want to understand the names of, you know, what you would name those, like the dark, shadowy thing or that sort of thing. Like, do they actually have a name? Would be my question, you know?
No, that's a great question. I don't understand enough of that area. I'm more a ufologist, an
Yeah,
investigative writer, as well as soon to be an author in this. And with all the articles written, very few are on the paranormal. Have I experienced paranormal situations? Yes, I have. Which, hearing what you've had to say, and with again so many witnesses, you know, that
yeah,
explained it and obviously made it go public to where the media got hold of it. Sometimes they're just apparitions. I would say spiritual entities. Some can partially manifest themselves into this dimension. Um, the big picture that I mentioned to you off the air was the fact that the universe is teeming with life. So there's so many different forms, and we are still pretty much the youngest kids on the block. So when we
no,
talk
that's,
again, and we'll discuss what
yeah,
other entities can definitely exist. Even where I live, we're close to ley lines, and there's some amazing events that occur through that. So that
okay.
being said, thank you so much for taking the
Yes,
time,
thank you.
reaching out to me. Oh, my pleasure. And I'm sure we'll be in touch here real soon. And I'm also sure Cindy's going to enjoy watching this interview.
Yep, definitely. Thanks, Ed. Take
You
care.
too. You too. Have a great day, and I'll be in touch real soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
And thank you, listeners and viewers, all of you. God bless, because without you, we're nothing. And really, we're all about getting the message out. All the people for whom I have done case studies, the bottom line is we're all friends, and these people are real. Just what Wendy's saying, these are her experiences. And when you have people this brave to come forward, even with past ridicule or media coverage, things like that, to get the stories out as they are, we're all better for it. So thanks again, Wendy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.